For the next several weeks, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. Maybe it was paranoia. Maybe it was experience. A man who had already died once tended to take threats seriously. Charles hired additional security. Not obvious bodyguards. Not men in suits following me everywhere. Just professionals who quietly monitored things in the background. At first I thought it was excessive. Then the first attack came, and I realized Charles had been right. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday. The kind of day that should have been forgettable. School, workout, dinner. Nothing unusual. I was driving back from the gym when a black SUV appeared behind me. At first I ignored it. Then I noticed something strange. Every turn I made, it followed. Every lane change, every detour. It stayed there, patient, persistent, watching. My expression hardened. The road ahead curved toward an industrial district. Empty warehouses, minimal traffic. Perfect place for an accident. Or something worse. The SUV accelerated, closing the distance. I immediately understood. This wasn't surveillance anymore. This was action. I grabbed my phone. Charles. His voice came instantly. What's wrong? I think someone is trying to force me off the road. Silence. Then his tone changed. Cold. Dangerously cold. Where are you? I told him. Keep driving. What about them? Leave them to me. The call ended. The SUV suddenly surged forward. Its front bumper slammed into the back of my vehicle. Metal screeched. The steering wheel jerked violently. Adrenaline exploded through my body. A second hit came seconds later. Harder. More aggressive. My heart pounded. The driver wasn't trying to scare me. He was trying to kill me. I swerved sharply. The SUV overshot. For one brief second, our vehicles were side by side. I looked through the tinted window and recognized the man driving. The fixer. The same man from the photograph. The same man from the novel. Victor Kane. A character who shouldn't have entered my life for years. Yet there he was. Smiling. Actually smiling. Like he enjoyed it. The SUV accelerated again. Then something unexpected happened. 3 black sedans suddenly appeared from different streets. Moving fast. Very fast. The moment they surrounded us, Victor's smile vanished. His expression turned ugly. The sedans boxed him in, forced him toward the shoulder. Within seconds, the chase ended. Professional. Clean. Efficient.
I pulled over.
Breathing heavily. Hands shaking slightly. Several men exited the sedans. Charles stepped out behind them. His face looked terrifying. Not angry. Not emotional. Just cold. The kind of cold that made dangerous people nervous. Victor was dragged from his vehicle. Still trying to act tough. Still pretending he wasn't worried. That act lasted about 30 seconds. Then Charles spoke. I gave you a warning. Victor's face paled. Interesting. Very interesting. Apparently they knew each other. Charles. Victor attempted a smile. This is all a misunderstanding.
No.
Charles walked closer. This is exactly what I warned you not to do. For the first time, genuine fear appeared in Victor's eyes. I watched quietly, learning, observing. Charles had always seemed like a calm lawyer. Reliable, intelligent, trustworthy. But this was different. This version of him felt dangerous. Very dangerous. Victor eventually disappeared that night. I never learned where they took him. I never asked. Some questions were better left unanswered. What mattered was the message. My enemies had stopped hiding. The next attack would be bigger. I knew it. Charles knew it. And unfortunately, so did Evelyn. She arrived at my house the following morning. Furious. Absolutely furious. The moment she saw me, she marched across the room. Then punched my shoulder. Hard. I nearly fell off the couch. What was that for? That was for almost dying. Her eyes were red. Not from anger. From worry. She had clearly been crying. I felt oddly guilty. I'm fine. That's not the point. She crossed her arms. You could have been killed. Technically true. Very true. Actually, she had no idea how true. I tried changing the subject. It didn't work. Eventually she sat beside me, silent, thinking. Then she asked a question I wasn't prepared for. Who are you really? The room became quiet, dangerously quiet. I forced a smile. What kind of question is that? The honest kind. She looked directly into my eyes. Nobody your age acts like you. I said nothing. She continued. You invest like an expert. You talk like someone 3 times your age. You somehow knew where I would be the night of the accident. My stomach tightened. She had noticed more than I realized. Much more. Then came the final blow. And sometimes. Her voice softened. You look sad. I blinked. What? Like someone who already lived an entire lifetime. My heart nearly stopped. For a brief moment, I wondered if she somehow knew. But that was impossible. Right? She couldn't know. Could she? Fortunately, she laughed, breaking the tension. I know that sounds ridiculous. I forced myself to relax. You have a very active imagination. She smiled. Maybe. The conversation moved on. But the question stayed with me. Who was I really? A teenager? A middle-aged man reborn into youth? A reader trapped inside a story? The answer became more complicated every day. 3 months later, Evelyn shocked everyone, including me. She created a software algorithm. Not a small improvement. Not a school project. A genuine breakthrough. The kind of breakthrough that could change an entire industry. Several technology firms immediately noticed. Offers began arriving. Investors appeared. Recruiters called constantly. The future genius of Crown of Ashes had officially begun her rise. The funny part? The novel said this happened 3 years later. Not now. 3 years. Another change. Another ripple. Another reminder that the timeline was evolving. The future was becoming unstable. That realization worried me more than I admitted. Because if positive events could happen earlier, negative events could too. And sure enough, they did. One rainy evening, Charles entered my office carrying a thick folder. His expression was grim. Again. I was beginning to hate that expression. What now? He tossed the folder onto my desk. Read. I opened it. Within seconds, my jaw tightened. Lawsuit documents. Guardianship petitions. Financial claims. Inheritance challenges. My mother had launched a full legal attack. She wasn't acting alone anymore. Gregory stood beside her. Several relatives had joined them. Even distant family members suddenly appeared. Everyone wanted a piece. Everyone wanted money. The most ridiculous claim stated that I was mentally unstable, that I lacked the capacity to manage my affairs. I almost laughed. Then I stopped, because I remembered something. In my first life, Gregory often said something. A sentence that never made sense back then. If we can't control him willingly, we'll find another way. At the time, I thought it was frustration. Now I wasn't so sure. What are our chances? Charles snorted. They have no case. Then why are you worried? He looked at me, long and hard, then answered quietly. Because this lawsuit isn't the real attack. A chill traveled down my spine. What do you mean? Charles opened the folder to a specific page. A photograph. My mother, Gregory, and another man. A man I recognized immediately. Not from real life. From the novel. Damien Cross. One of the major villains. Corporate predator. A future billionaire. A monster hiding behind a charming smile. In Crown of Ashes, Damien destroyed dozens of lives. Companies. Families. Anyone standing in his way. According to the original timeline, he shouldn't become important for another decade. Yet here he was. Already moving. Already watching. Already involved. The realization hit me like a truck. This wasn't just about inheritance anymore. The players from the novel were entering the board. Far earlier than they should. Which meant something else. If villains were arriving early, then the main story itself might be approaching. Much sooner than expected. That night I barely slept. I sat alone on the balcony overlooking the city. Thinking. Calculating. Planning. The lights below stretched endlessly toward the horizon. Somewhere among those millions of people, future heroes were living ordinary lives. Future villains were making their first moves. Future wars were quietly taking shape. And for the first time since my reincarnation, I stopped thinking about survival, because survival was no longer enough. If the timeline was accelerating, then eventually the chaos from Crown of Ashes would arrive. When it did, money alone wouldn't save anyone. Not me, not Evelyn, not the people I cared about. I needed influence, information, power, real power, the kind that could change events before they happened, the kind that could protect people, the kind that could fight back. As I stared across the city skyline, I finally made a decision. No more hiding. No more pretending to be a lazy heir. No more quietly watching from the shadows. My enemies believed they were hunting a teenager. They had no idea what they were actually provoking. And soon, they were going to learn. Because the empire I was building in secret was already far larger than anyone imagined. Even Charles didn't know the full truth. Even Evelyn didn't know. And when that truth finally emerged, it would shake the entire country. But before that happened, one person from my past life was about to return. The one person I never expected to see again. The woman whose betrayal had indirectly led to my death. And unlike my mother, she remembered me too. For a long time I simply stared at the message. 3 words. That's all it contained. I remember you. Nothing more.
No explanation. No signature. No threats.
No demands. Just 3 words that made my blood run cold. I read the message again. And again. Then a 4th time. The sender was unknown. No number. No identifying information. Just those 3 impossible words. I remember you. Nobody should remember. Not my previous life. Not the rain-soaked construction site. Not the years of poverty. Not the loneliness. Not the death. Nobody except me. Yet somehow, someone did. I immediately called Charles. Within 20 minutes he arrived. I showed him the message. His expression darkened. Can we trace it? Already tried. He shook his head. Nothing. That wasn't reassuring. It was the opposite. The kind of people who couldn't be traced were usually the people you should worry about. I spent the entire night awake, thinking, analyzing, trying to identify who it could be. There weren't many possibilities. In my previous life, most people eventually disappeared from my world. Friends drifted away. Relationships ended. Coworkers changed. Only a handful remained significant. And among those people, one person stood above all the others. Sophia Mercer, the woman I once planned to marry. The woman who promised she would never leave. The woman who eventually betrayed me. Not because she was evil. Not because she was cruel. Because she was afraid. Afraid of poverty. Afraid of struggle. Afraid of wasting her life beside a man who never seemed to move forward. I understood that now. Back then I hated her. For years. But hatred faded with time. Especially after death. The next morning another message arrived. Meet me. Same old cafe. Tuesday. 7 p.m. My stomach tightened. Same old cafe. There had been a cafe. A tiny place near the construction company where I worked. A place only 2 people would recognize. Me and Sophia. No one else. I knew then. Without question. Without doubt. It was her. Tuesday arrived faster than expected. The entire day felt strange. Like walking toward a dream. Or a nightmare. Maybe both. At precisely 7 o'clock, I entered the cafe. The place was nearly empty. Soft music played in the background. Rain tapped gently against the windows. Then I saw her. A young woman sitting near the back. Long brown hair. Green eyes. Maybe 17 years old. Far younger than the woman I remembered. Yet somehow unmistakable. Sophia. She looked up. Our eyes met. For several seconds neither of us spoke. Then she smiled weakly. You really came. My throat felt dry. You're alive. She laughed softly. That's a strange thing to say. Neither of us laughed after that. Because we both understood. She gestured toward the empty chair. I sat down. Silence lingered. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Finally she spoke. I died in a hospital. The words hit me like a hammer. Not because I doubted her. Because I didn't. I was 71. Tears appeared in her eyes. I had cancer. The room felt unreal. Like reality itself had cracked open. She continued quietly. I closed my eyes. I thought it was over. Then I woke up 17 again. My hands clenched beneath the table. She remembered. Everything. Every year. Every mistake. Every regret. Just like me. For a long moment neither of us spoke. Then she whispered something I never expected to hear.
I'm sorry.
I looked at her, confused. She wiped away tears. I spent decades regretting what I did. My chest tightened. Sophia, please. She shook her head. Let me say it. Her voice trembled. In my previous life, I abandoned you. The words sounded painful, like she had repeated them 1,000 times. I convinced myself I had no choice. I told myself survival mattered more. I told myself leaving was practical. Her gaze lowered. But after I left, more tears. I watched your life fall apart. I remained silent, listening. Every year I wanted to apologize. Every year I was too ashamed. The cafe felt incredibly quiet, almost isolated from the world. Then she looked directly at me. Then I died. A sad smile appeared. And somehow the universe gave me another chance. My emotions were complicated. Anger, relief, confusion, sympathy, all mixed together. The truth was simple. I wasn't the same man anymore. And she wasn't the same woman either. Decades had changed both of us. Finally, I asked the question that mattered. Why contact me? Sophia hesitated, then reached into her bag and placed a folder on the table. My heartbeat accelerated. I opened it. The contents shocked me. Photographs, financial records, names, locations, evidence. A lot of evidence. My expression hardened. Where did you get this? Sophia's answer stunned me. Because I remembered something. I frowned. What? Her face became serious. In our previous life, Gregory didn't just ruin your inheritance. The room suddenly felt colder. He sold information. I froze. What? She nodded. I worked for a financial consulting company years later. I discovered records. She pointed toward the folder. Gregory was connected to Damien Cross long before either of us realized. I slowly turned pages. Each document made things worse. Much worse. Money transfers, meetings, corporate shell companies, secret agreements. The evidence painted a disturbing picture. Gregory wasn't merely greedy. He had been involved in something far larger. Something organized. Something dangerous. And apparently that connection existed decades earlier than I knew. Sophia leaned forward. There's more. I looked up. Her expression frightened me. Not because of fear, because of certainty. The story is changing. My pulse stopped. How do you know that? She stared directly into my eyes, then said the one sentence I never expected. Because I've read Crown of Ashes too. Everything froze.